The sun sets early over the valley where Berry Pomeroy Castle rests in silence. Shadows stretch across broken walls as a wind whispers through the skeletal remains of a once proud fortress. In the fading light, its towers resemble hollow sentinels watching over a land that has long forgotten peace. The air grows colder near the stone. Beneath the ivy that clings to the old battlements, something waits ancient, unseen, and unresolved. Today, Berry Pomeroy is a ruin, tucked away in the dense woodlands of Devon, England. Tourists arrive during daylight, snapping photographs of its romantic decay. They speak in hushed voices, marvel at the age of the stones, then leave before the dark settles in. Because after nightfall, the castle shifts. What seemed beautiful in daylight becomes suffocating under moonlight. The forest muffles sound. Phones lose reception. The walls seem to breathe. Some say this place is England's most haunted castle, but not because of theatrical legends or embellished folklore. What lingers here is quieter, more intimate. People who have entered these ruins speak of something watching them from darkened archways, of sudden drops in temperature, of voices where no one stands. The reports do not exaggerate. They do not seek attention. They tremble with something harder to define, fear mixed with sorrow. This is the story of a place where history refuses to sleep, where grief echoes louder than footsteps, where one spirit, known only as the Bleeding Queen, is said to walk the same path she died upon nearly 4 centuries ago. Her presence is not a whisper, it is a wound, still open, bleeding through time. And she is not alone. What happened inside Berry Pomeroy's walls was never properly buried. Tonight, we unearth what remains. Berry Pomeroy Castle was never meant to be a place of silence. In the late 15th century, it rose from the Devon earth as a display of wealth and ambition, commissioned by the powerful Pomeroy family. It was meant to become a grand statement, a fortified manor designed to impress visiting nobles and intimidate rivals. But what began as a symbol of power would decay into a monument of betrayal, grief, and unfinished stories. The Pomeroys held the land for generations, but their loyalty to the crown during periods of political instability brought trouble. When the Tudor reign began to consolidate power, those aligned with former houses found themselves under suspicion. Whispers of treason circulated, alliances shifted. Behind the stone walls of Berry Pomeroy, the family's influence began to crumble. The castle's decline was neither swift nor clean. During the English Civil War, the surrounding countryside saw bloodshed. Royalists and parliamentarians fought bitterly, and many homes, including Berry Pomeroy, became entangled in the violence. Local accounts tell of executions carried out within the castle walls, men dragged into chambers beneath the Great Hall and never seen again. Torture was not officially sanctioned, but the cries that rose from below were not the sounds of mercy. Records from the early 1600s are sparse, but what exists points to a darker legacy. A young noblewoman named Eleanor Pomeroy vanished under unclear circumstances. Her name was scratched from most family documents. No burial site was recorded. Around this same period, servants and guards were dismissed abruptly, many without compensation. Some left written testimonies accusing the family of unnatural acts and secret imprisonments. What Berry Pomeroy became was not just a decaying fortress, but a vessel for what had gone wrong within its stone heart. The castle was abandoned by the end of the 18th century, left to rot while vines claimed its towers. Visitors began returning in the 1800s, drawn by the eerie beauty of its ruins. But they often reported something else, a heavy sensation near the tower, unexplained chills, voices speaking in empty corridors. The ground beneath Berry Pomeroy does not forget, nor do those who suffered within its walls. Greg Tanners has worked as a night security guard at Berry Pomeroy Castle for nearly 2 decades. A former soldier turned heritage officer, Greg was drawn to the solitude of the site. He expected long, quiet shifts walking the grounds, but what he found here was something else entirely. He first experienced it during a winter shift in 2006. Heavy rain had fallen all afternoon, and by nightfall the castle was cloaked in fog. Greg was completing his final rounds when he reached the East Tower, where the stone archways curl into shadow. As he turned the key in the gate's iron lock, he felt the sudden shift in air pressure, as if the building had inhaled around him. The temperature dropped instantly. He could see his own breath, even in thick gloves. "I heard the footsteps before I saw anything," Greg recalls. "Not on gravel, but on stone, deliberate, heel first, like someone descending stairs, but I was alone." He followed the sound inside. His flashlight beam scanned the walls, catching on crumbled mortar and rusted torch brackets. Then, just beyond the staircase, he saw her. A woman in what appeared to be a white gown, standing near the collapsed entrance to the lower cells. Her face was pale, eyes wide and unblinking. The fabric of her dress clung to her chest, stained dark across the bodice. "I didn't feel fear at first," he says, "just disbelief. Then I blinked, and she was gone. I looked down, and there was liquid on the stone, not water, something thicker. It looked like old blood in the torchlight." Greg tried to radio the main office, but his device emitted only static. When he turned to leave, he noticed condensation on the inside of the archway, glass fingerprints smeared across the interior surface. The problem was, that room had been sealed for years. Since that night, Greg refuses to enter the East Tower alone. "She's still there," he says. "Not angry, not screaming, but waiting. And whatever she's waiting for, it hasn't come yet." He still works the night shift, but when the fog rolls in, he keeps his distance from the tower. Her name was Lady Eleanor Pomeroy, a noblewoman born into wealth and privilege but buried in silence. No official grave exists. No statue honors her. Only the cold stones of the East Tower bear witness to what happened, and they speak through chills and blood-soaked visions. Locals call her the Bleeding Queen, though she never wore a crown. Her death was not public. It was concealed, hidden by jealousy, sealed by fear, and remembered only in whispers. Eleanor's story was pieced together from fragments, lost letters, court records, and oral testimony passed through generations. She was said to be engaged to a foreign noble, a match that would have elevated her family's influence. But her sister, Margaret, viewed the union as a threat. Whether out of political rivalry or personal hatred, Margaret arranged for Eleanor's removal. The official tale claimed illness. The truth, according to hidden documents and unsealed correspondences, is darker. Eleanor was imprisoned within the castle's East Tower, denied light, denied food, and placed under the care of a leeching physician. She was subjected to regular bleeding rituals, under the guise of treating her female hysteria. Over the course of days, her body weakened. When she began to hallucinate, she was bound. Her final moments, according to a dismissed maid's secret testimony, were spent screaming for someone who never came. She has not left. Modern witnesses describe her apparition as detailed and consistent. She appears as a tall woman with cascading dark hair, dressed in torn white garments soaked across the chest and abdomen. Her eyes, they say, do not move. Her lips tremble as if whispering a name. She is most often seen in the hour before dawn, standing at the base of the stairwell that leads nowhere now. Her presence is preceded by a drop in temperature and a sudden stillness in the air. Dogs refuse to enter the area. Visitors report sharp pains in their ribs, shortness of breath, and the sensation of blood pooling at their feet. She does not scream, she does not chase, but she watches and she waits. Whatever bound her to that place, it has not loosened its grip. Rebecca Lowe never considered herself a believer. A travel blogger from Manchester, She visited historic sites for the architecture, not the stories. Berry Pomeroy Castle was just another stop on a week-long itinerary through Devon in 2019. The photos were supposed to show windswept ruins and quiet stonework, not something she still hesitates to speak about years later. It was late afternoon when she and two friends arrived. The sky was overcast, the forest path damp from earlier rain. They moved slowly through the site, admiring the outer walls and overgrown staircases. Near the chapel ruins, Rebecca paused to take a photo. That was when she heard a voice, so close it felt like someone had leaned in from behind her shoulder. "Help her." She turned sharply, expecting to see one of her friends, but no one was near. The voice had been low, desperate, female. It sounded like it had come from inside her own ear. She told herself it was a trick of the wind and moved on, though her heart was already racing. As they approached the east tower, Rebecca noticed something strange. The area ahead looked darker than the rest of the ruins, as if shadow clung to the stone. She stepped forward alone while her friends lingered by the signpost. That was when she saw the figure. A woman stood just inside the arched passage. Her dress was torn, the front soaked in dark red. Her face was angled downward, but her eyes locked onto Rebecca's. The moment stretched unnaturally long. Rebecca couldn't move. Her legs refused to respond. Her skin felt cold and wet, though no rain had fallen. "I thought it was a statue at first," she later recalled. "A historical installation maybe, but the eyes, they were alive, and she was staring at me." It was only when one of her friends called her name that the paralysis broke. Rebecca stumbled back, gasping. When they looked again, the passage was empty. That night, she woke twice, soaked in sweat, heart pounding. For 3 weeks after the visit, she dreamed of blood dripping from unseen heights, staining white cloth, always pooling around her bare feet. She has never returned. Long before the castle rose, the land beneath Berry Pomeroy was marked by reverence and fear. Oral traditions from Devon's oldest families speak of a burial site on that hill, used by ancient priestesses long before Christianity arrived. Locals still refer to the ground as hollow, meaning not empty but open, a place where the barrier between the living and the dead wears thin. Marion Oakes, a spiritual historian and practicing medium, has visited the ruins over 24 times in her career. Her theory is simple but unsettling. Berry Pomeroy is a wound, she says. Not just a haunted place, but a rupture. What happened there tore something open, and it never healed. Marion believes the violent nature of Eleanor Pomeroy's death, combined with the presence of pre-Christian burial energies, created a spiritual vortex, a place where echoes do not fade but amplify. She points to the rare consistency of sightings, the shared symptoms among witnesses, and the recurring themes in dreams reported by visitors. Some believe Eleanor's death coincided with a blood moon, a celestial event often feared in early European folklore. It was said that any act of betrayal committed during that lunar cycle would stain the soul of the land itself. Several historians note that a rare lunar eclipse occurred over Devon the same year Eleanor disappeared. Whether these beliefs hold any scientific weight is irrelevant to those who have walked the grounds and felt the change in the air. Marion describes one visit during which she stood in the chapel doorway and felt as if something passed through her, a chill that split her thoughts in half, leaving a single word echoing in her mind: trapped. Whatever force lives at Berry Pomeroy, it is not only haunting the past, it may be reliving it. The Bleeding Queen is not the only spirit said to wander Berry Pomeroy Castle. Beneath the eastern wing, in the collapsed remnants of a once-hidden corridor, another presence has been felt for centuries: a voice, a scream, a desperate knock from behind stone. She is known among locals as the Screaming Midwife, though her real name was Bridget Weller. Bridget was a servant in the Pomeroy household, trusted with Lady Eleanor's care during her final days. Not much is known of her early life, only that she came from a line of women reputed for their knowledge of herbal medicine. Some say she was a midwife, others say she was a healer accused of witchcraft. What is agreed upon is this: Bridget tried to save Eleanor. According to sealed court documents discovered in 1911, Bridget was caught attempting to sneak powdered bark and tinctures into the tower chamber. Her goal, historians believe, was to counter the physician's bloodletting and stabilize Eleanor's condition. But her actions were seen as treasonous and heresy. She was imprisoned without trial. Rather than execute her publicly, the family chose secrecy. Bridget was led into a narrow side chamber behind the chapel. The doorway was bricked up in silence. She was entombed alive, her screams reportedly heard for days before they faded. Today, that part of the ruin is sealed, but the screams persist. Visitors who stray near the blocked passage report a piercing cry, often described as both mournful and enraged. Paranormal investigators have captured sudden bursts of static and thudding knocks, always in threes, always during heavy storms. Some report a choking sensation when standing near the old wall, as if the air is too thick to breathe. Staff describe hearing a woman sobbing behind stone, only to find nothing but dust and darkness. Unlike Eleanor's haunting, which is cold and sorrowful, Bridget's presence burns with fury and desperation. Some believe she does not seek peace, but recognition that someone might finally speak her name aloud and tell the truth of what she risked and how she was silenced. In the stillness beneath the chapel, she is not quiet, she is still screaming. In the early hours of the 17th of September, 2022, a private paranormal investigation team known as Hollow Trace arrived at Berry Pomeroy Castle under special permit. Their goal was to capture data on alleged anomalies in the East Tower and Chapel corridor. What they left with was a recording that still divides experts, one that may be the most chilling evidence to ever emerge from the site. At 3:14 a.m., the team's static thermal camera, positioned near the sealed chapel passage, recorded a human-shaped figure pacing inside the restricted area. The figure appeared head down, slow-moving, with clear definition in limbs and posture. The body glowed red on the thermal, reading signaling heat, yet the surrounding air was registered several degrees below freezing. The pacing lasted 46 seconds before the figure stopped, tilted its head, and turned to face the camera. A moment later, it vanished entirely. No fade, no blur, simply gone. Immediately after the sighting, lead investigator Julian Banks felt a sharp pressure in his chest and collapsed. His colleagues found him conscious but unresponsive, clutching his ribs. He described a vivid impression of a spike piercing through his sternum, followed by a sensation of drowning. Paramedics found no physical injury, but Julian later reported recurring dreams of a woman in white with blood trailing behind her. An EVP session conducted minutes later yielded a single unmistakable phrase, "I died for nothing." The voice, female and clear, was not heard during recording but became audible upon playback. Analysts confirmed the frequency fell just below human hearing range at the time of capture. This event was documented, time-stamped, and independently reviewed by two separate audio and visual analysts. Neither could offer a rational explanation for the thermal anomaly, nor for the voice embedded in the recording. It is not the first time activity in the East Tower has spiked, but never before has the evidence been so direct, so visceral. For many in the paranormal community, the message is no longer metaphorical. The Bleeding Queen does not just linger, she is trying to be heard. Berry Pomeroy Castle remains open to the public, its ruins a quiet attraction for history lovers and ghost story seekers alike. By day, families wander the grounds with cameras and maps, marveling at the twisted trees and ivy-choked walls. But those who work here know the truth that after the gates close and the last footsteps fade, the castle begins to breathe. Certain areas are now permanently closed. The corridor behind the chapel, once accessible to staff, has been sealed with a reinforced gate after repeated reports of unexplained noises and electronic failures. Tour guides avoid it. Maintenance crews refuse to enter unless in pairs. One longtime groundskeeper, now retired, claimed that batteries drained within minutes whenever he stood near the east wall. On one occasion, a fully charged drill stopped mid-spin and never worked again. Inside the east tower, a crude warning has been scratched into the stone by an unknown hand. She wakes when you speak her name. It is unclear who left it, but no staff member has tried to remove it. Renovation efforts in 2021 stirred further unease. During a routine clearing of collapsed stone near the tower stairs, workers unearthed a rusted iron ring embedded deep in the floor. Attached to it was a length of decayed chain. No record of a cell existing in that section could be found in the castle's blueprints. After the discovery, activity increased. Cold spots spread. Unseen footsteps were heard during daylight tours. One visitor collapsed near the site with no medical explanation, waking moments later with the words, "Not buried," repeated over and over. Staff quietly admit that some rooms are no longer entered without ritual, salt lines, prayers, small, private superstitions. Despite, or perhaps because of the growing notoriety, the castle continues to draw curious souls. But those who linger too long, those who speak too loudly or stray from the guided path, often leave changed. It is not a matter of belief. The presence at Berry Pomeroy does not require your permission. It only requires that you listen. Berry Pomeroy Castle stands as more than stone and ruin. It is a vessel for sorrow that refuses to be silenced. Within its broken towers and shadowed corridors, something lingers that cannot be explained by history books or architectural surveys. It is not just the echo of footsteps or the flicker of pale figures. It is grief, layered deep into the walls, pressed into the soil, pulsing just beneath the surface of the present. Lady Eleanor Pomeroy was never given justice. Her story was hidden, her voice buried, her death turned into a family secret. Yet her spirit endures not in rage, but in mourning. Every sighting, every whisper, every sudden chill is a reminder that the past is not passive. It remembers, and it waits to be acknowledged. The Bleeding Queen is not seeking vengeance. She is seeking to be known, to have the truth of her fate spoken aloud, perhaps for the first time in centuries. It is a haunting born not from evil, but from the silence that followed cruelty, the kind of silence that echoes loudest when no one dares to look closer. What if some places remember everything? What if trauma marks the land like bloodstains, cloth impossible to wash away, no matter how much time passes? Berry Pomeroy is one such place. If you have walked its paths and felt a presence at your back, if you have stood in a ruin and felt the weight of unseen eyes, then you are not alone. These stories are not just legends, they are testimonies. We invite you to share your experiences in the comments. If this story has stirred something within you, subscribe for more true hauntings that history could not bury. Some ghosts do not want to scare you, they just want you to remember.